Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the HR Tech Chat video podcast. And with me today, I have Amaresh Tripathy, who is Senior Vice President and Global Business Leader at Genpact. Welcome, Amaresh.
Thank you so much, Brent. Great to be here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I am really looking forward to this conversation today. You're doing some really fascinating big things at Genpact, and it hits a lot of notes in human capital management around career, developing your people, upskilling, data, LMS content, all this kind of stuff. And I'm really looking forward to diving into it. But maybe first you could just share with our audience a little bit more about what Genpact does, and then,
Sure.
sort of what brought you to Genpact, what your background is.
Absolutely. So for Genpact, for those who don't know, it's been a spin-off of General Electric. It's an independent, like a publicly listed company, for roughly $4.5 billion in size. And we it's a large professional services company that does basically two broad things for our clients, which are Fortune 1000 companies around the globe. One is what we call digital operations, which is where we are running the operations on behalf of our clients in finance, supply chain, sales and commercial, risk. There are a few areas that we kind of go and cover. And the second part of our business, which is called data tech and AI, which is how do we transform some of those operations whether we are running it or not in those same areas using data analytics, technology, and artificial intelligence. That's kind of roughly kind of this thing. Within that, my personal role is I run the data analytics and AI business part of that, where I'm helping clients drive those transformations and making our client organizations, I would say, more data intelligent and data aware. But I play a similar role internally also when we have 120,000 colleagues of ours who are spread over the globe. And basically, how do you make our organization, Genpact, more data aware for us and on behalf of our clients? That's kind of where I think this conversation will be focused on.
Yeah. And by the way, AI, one of my favorite topics. Certainly not alone in that.
Right, especially right now.
It seems like you can't talk about anything without AI permeating. Maybe the robots are already taking over, and that's evidence of it.
Yeah, who knows? You're not talking to a robot right now.
Yeah, maybe are you real? Anyway, not quite there yet. This podcast is not a deep fake, everybody. In any event, yeah, you're doing some really interesting things, and why don't we dive right into it? 120,000 approximately strong workforce individuals at Genpact, and you've already sort of brought about 65,000 of them
Yes.
through this data awareness program.
Yes.
And a lot of people know, watching the podcast, that we have conversations before the podcast, and we were in the green room just a few minutes ago, and we were talking about how I think you were saying that this is probably the biggest data awareness program, at least in business, in the world.
Yeah, this is the largest, at least we know, or definitely one of the largest data literacy and data awareness programs, I think, in the world, where we are essentially doing this entire program at scale for all the 120,000 folks. The intention, Brent, is actually a very simple one. I mean, curiosity and learning are kind of our two broad pillars around and values that we focus on for everyone. And obviously, we are a learning organization. And as part of that, one of the things we discovered is what is the biggest trend in like next decade or so that is going to define work itself. And it is about how does data analytics gets infused into the day-to-day work that we are doing. You don't need to be a data scientist. You don't need to be a mathematician or a computer scientist, but you need to be able to use the data to do your work better. And that was kind of the core insight. That's why we use the word data aware about there could be other words that we could use. And our vision was, how do we kind of create a culture, structure, training, like the whole process around it, so that we can have all our employees, all our colleagues, 120,000 of them, be data aware. Because once you do that, that becomes a comparative differentiation that we do for like against and also helps our clients, helps our own people, and helps Genpact. I mean, at the highest level. That was kind of the broader mission that we kind of started the journey with.
Yeah, and that, you bring up some good points here. And let me just kind of unpack it a little bit, because you're
Yeah.
you're hitting a lot of really important things here. So first of all, this is about upskilling your workforce. So this is an organization, Genpact, putting in the effort, showing the interest in making sure that each individual contributor in the workforce is, is upskilled in the most optimal way for the particular task at hand that they do at Genpact. So you're showing, in a way, sort of in the 360 Insights parlance, we talk about efficiency and empathy when it comes to the workforce. And this is very much an empathy play in that
Yes.
respect. But it's also sort of it's a, let's say that Genpact itself is sort of organizationally self-aware, I think, by doing this, because you and the organization understand that if we do this, we are going to be better at doing the work that we do, and we're going to retain more customers, we're going to grow, and all these sorts of things. So it's one of those sort of classic stories where an organization pays attention to and dedicates time to their employees, and that results in dividends for the organization itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's and you just one more point I'll add. It's empathy, but it's that empathy also leads to efficiency, and it leads to value. More important, it leads to value. That's at least how we thought about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You took the words right out of my mouth. And what's interesting, could you just walk us through like what it looks like? I understand it's a certification
Sure.
program, and then there's sort of an opportunity to earn a black belt, if you will,
Yeah.
in data awareness after that. How does it work?
Yeah. So basically, let me just tell you a little bit of the history of what the influences has been. So one is, I mean, given I told you our heritage on General Electric, I mean, like this notion of black belt and Lean Six Sigma, that's kind of very ingrained in us, right? And if you think about one thing that if you would kind of want to take that from that journey and that big learning, is how do you drive a philosophical change about how to do the work at scale. I mean, if you really think about it, Lean Six Sigma absolutely nails it. It's one of the most successful programs are kind of going doing that. And there's a structure around it, which is there is a little bit of learning, there is a self-learning, there's a testing, then you do a green belt project where you kind of like you have a little bit of support around it, then you actually go to a black belt where you independently are doing something big, and you bring the clients in, you bring the business users in. There's a structured process around it, and we actually pretty much adopted that. We knew we could train things at scale, or we could drive things at scale using a very proven methodology. It's not like the content, but the process and the structure.
Mm.
On top of that, we said, okay, if there was what does data awareness mean in terms of content? Right. That was the second aspect of that we kind of developed around that, and that's kind of what we started filling out. What the content, what's the project, what kind of projects. So we kind of laid out kind of, I would say, the intellectual foundations of what and the content part of this picture, and we kind of combined both. And the way it works right now is there are 3 or 4 steps. One is we use a very distributed platform, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. We call Genome, which is based on Edcast that we talked about earlier, where if you are an associate, you can go and spend 2-3 hours. It's a kind of a 3-hour self-paced learning where you are aware of, okay, some of the basic data terms, like think about visualization, think about anomalies. What is an anomaly? How do you think about whether it's a mean and median? What's the difference between that? How do you actually think about what is a predictive model? What is data quality itself? I would say some basic 101 things that you kind of at a very high level learn. And based on that, you go and do a testing. So you go and get tested, and you have to kind of get to whatever passing grade in that to kind of get to the next level. So that's kind of number one, so that you go to the first that's kind of the first gate. And then after you're doing that, there are some more learning modules that you have, which is think about the 201s kind of courses in certain areas that you start taking. And then you would basically go and do a project. And the focus that we did in the project was it would be a prediction project. We kind of focused on it. That you're going to predict something. So we kind of up the ante a little bit.
Okay.
And then you do the project prediction project in context of a client work that you're working on, in the context of a client working with them, and then that gets validated, and once kind of that gets signed off and the value is signed off, then you essentially get certified. So that's kind of the 3-step 4-step process that we kind of took the entire organization through.
Oh, that's really interesting. And you were mentioning EdCast. And what else do you have? So how does EdCast figure into this? How
Yeah.
does that sort of and I'm hearing that some of the content and learning contents are delivered maybe in real time while the employees working with the
Yeah.
with the client and some of this. Yeah.
So there are a couple of layers of that. Let me just unpack it for you. So one is, I mean, there is a and that's some of the investments that we've already made and we are riding on. What one is, like, we had this program called our entire learning philosophy, what we called collective intelligence. And
Uh,
the idea there of collective intelligence, it's actually just kind of, there's some inspiration from MIT there,
yeah.
where the idea is, like, the best people to, you have to learn in the context of work, and you learn not only from one individual, you learn from a group, right? And it's the group that becomes a lot stronger. So those two things, principles we did, and we basically took EdCast and we think about us, we skinned a layer on top of EdCast, and we kind of internally branded that called Genome. And the idea was, and then, so that's kind of what the technology side of things. Basically, think about a UI UX layer on top of EdCast, and then we took a group of folks who are experts in their own work, supply chain experts, data experts, AI experts, and ask them to curate content, not kind of just buy content, but curate content that they think their colleagues should learn. So basically, you have experts curate content, and that is what the colleagues learn. And so on a self-paced way, and once you learn that in a self-paced way, you have an opportunity to work with these gurus and master gurus. That's what we kind of laid out. So there's a structure around that. So there is a learning philosophy around this collective intelligence we already had in place.
Mhm.
So when we launched this program, we call this program Data Bridge, this data awareness program that I talked about. We essentially leveraged the EdCast genome and the guru and master guru structure to accelerate our journey around it becoming the data aware organization. So that gives you a little bit of context of why we approached it.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. So the content is curated by experts.
Experts.
Yeah, and in that content, where is it sourced from, like MOOCs, or is it from
It's
anywhere?
all over. It could be YouTube videos, it could be MOOCs, it could be reports. It's, think about it. So I'm an expert in data analytics, AI, and everything. So I'm reading things all the time. So whenever in the things that I'm reading, because I'm a master guru, I'm like, oh, this is really interesting for a lot of my colleagues to know. And it's not like sending email. What I basically say is, hey, listen, here, I mean, we have some folks who help manage and manage the channels. I identify pieces of content, whether it's a video, whether it's an article I'm reading, whether it's this. I said, okay, these should be part of this course. And then obviously we kind of go and put a structure around it and kind of do that. It could be MOOCs. It could be, I'm learning a programming thing and it should be relevant. So it's my job, or a guru or a master guru's job, all the things that they are learning, it's their collective learning. We want to spread very, very quickly. So that's kind of how it is getting curated.
Oh, interesting, great, wonderful. And is that sort of distributed with um, that's distributed via EdCast? Do you have Cornerstone in place as well, or
I think so. I'm not.
okay?
I think we have cornerstones in place. I think in terms of probably in the how we measure the certifications and everything like that.
Okay.
We also have that, but we definitely have the EdCast. So that content comes there, gets curated. But we have essentially created. Think about a UX UI based on persona on top of it, so you can create your own and manage your own learning journeys.
Okay, this is like, sorry, this is a really good illustration of sort of a future of work, modern
That is.
learning experience for like a white collar professional, high level professional. Um, Because you have the self-directed learning, you
Yeah.
have the curated content, you have sort of the state of the art in terms of technology to get that content delivered at just the right time to the people when they need it, and also has the human element. That's something that we talk a lot about.
Yeah,
Is that
I mean,
you have a lot of
we have these gurus and master guru sessions. So basically, like once every month, or I mean, as a master guru once every month, but as gurus, I mean, we have people like that thing where every week they would host sessions. It will be open door. Hey, these are the issues, or this is the topic I want to talk about. So there is a huge human aspect of it where people will reach out. So it's a networked human aspect. There are some structured programs, and then there's a lot of one-on-ones.
yeah, yeah. Uh, What kind of results have you seen for the business and for, well, there's all sorts of things. It's holistic, right? There's benefits, in terms of, employee engagement, retention, revenue, retention of not just employees but also customers, and length of engagements. What kind of results have you seen?
I mean, I'll give you one broad statistic on the broader genome program, and then I'll come to data bridge, right? On the broader genome program, when we launched, and I think at least a year ago or so, when we looked at the number of hours just on our ecosystem, the 120,000 people, was roughly a quarter of all LinkedIn learning hours. So think about that. So there was a lot of, so people are hungry to upskill themselves. And when you make it open and when you make it available, it happens. The sorry, let me
I
pause.
want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. I might have missed it, and forgive me. So a quarter of all LinkedIn learning hours for Genpact?
No, for overall LinkedIn learning hours that was there at that point in time, and this is a little bit older statistic. Yeah, it'll blow your mind. Yeah?
Wow.
And I mean, so the amount of learning per employee that's kind of going on in number of hours at that point in time. Obviously, I'm not familiar with the latest statistics, and obviously things have moved on. But on the data bridge, coming back on the data bridge side of it, we launched this program and we opened it up for signing. And here's the thing. I mean, this is like think about, there are people all over the world doing different. You could be processing invoices, you could be doing like managing claims, you could be you could be a data scientist, you could, I mean, there's all kinds of roles there. And and there was no incentive to sign up, and we said, go ahead, this program is available, right? Literally within 2 weeks we had 30,000 people sign up, and we didn't even know what to do. Like, we never expected that.
That's
So
amazing.
and then we started measuring that, and over time, I mean, literally in first 6 months, this is like we're probably coming 2 years into the journey right now. But in first, and obviously, like, new people come in and all the things, it's kind of it kind of there's a natural flow of business. Literally in first 6 months, we had more than 55,000 people, and now it's probably close to 75,000 folks who had signed up, and after sign up, they had to spend the 2-3 hours and then do the training and testing.
Mhm.
I mean, the number of sign up is a lot more, probably close to 100,000 people hours, but kind of starting and signing, that itself is at 65, 70,000 folks right now. And that just tells me the latent demand people,
Mhm.
our colleagues have, or I think probably the entire workforce has, on learning about being data aware, realizing this is the future in terms of how a lot of the work is going to get done. And because there was literally, they are taking times away from the family. They're doing it on their own time to kind of make themselves more relevant, and kind of it just blew our mind when we
It's
started seeing that.
that is indeed mind blowing. We use that term a lot, but this really is. What's interesting also is this fits into a larger sort of context here. Um, we hear a lot about, why don't we dive into AI just a little bit? Because I
Yeah,
think it is relevant here. We
sure.
hear a lot about artificial intelligence, taking over existing jobs, and we hear a lot about all the new jobs that we don't even know about yet or roles that will exist in the future.
Correct.
Um, and so some people say, don't worry about that. There will be new roles that we don't know about. But you still need to think about, you can't remain static as a career professional. You have to learn new skills. And to me, it just seems that upskilling, like real um, uh, intention, like upskilling with intentionality, sponsored by, I guess that's the word, or encouraged and sponsored by the employing organization, and sort of an indefatigable sort of, inexorable march in that direction is just absolutely critical to make sure that, I mean, not to sound too future of work here, but this might be science fiction of work, but to make sure humans actually can work,
Yeah.
in a sense, right? Because, and this is what I'm hearing with this program, the Data Bridge program, is that you're really helping your workforce to acquire skills that we're really far off from AI ever really mastering.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's funny you mentioned that. This morning, we just launched a generative AI. I mean, obviously, we have to keep it. I mean, we basically launched a basic, intermediate, expert program of generative AI with content on the same channel, right?
Wow.
Right? For everyone, right? And we have done that. And our CEO just sent a note. I said, okay, I'm going to read all of it. I think I'll go and train myself. Well, and that's, I think, I mean, one is part of it is the culture of the organization, and which I'm extremely proud of. But more importantly, you're 100% right. I mean, you have to keep pace and kind of continue kind of driving that. But the thing is, which is just the other piece of it, just I want to point out, it's not about just learning. You have to apply it in the context of work you're doing. That's the piece we figured where it makes it sticky. Because I can learn a lot of things, but it's like, okay, I watch a lot of stuff on Netflix, but doesn't mean like, I mean, I'm applying to it. Applying in the context of work, that is the next, that's essentially what we did, which we haven't talked about, but that we saw was a game changer for us.
Well, maybe you could just dive into that a little bit more. Like, how did you actually sort of drive that?
Yes.
Because I agree. You're absolutely correct. Learning in a vacuum. Okay, I've learned all this stuff and I'm still in my basement playing video games or whatever it is. So, right. Well, maybe I learned the meaning of life. I didn't share it with anybody. So,
And I'll give you a very clear example, right? So think about, and I'll personalize it on a persona, but you kind of extrapolate from that. You just went through the data bridge program and you process claims, let's say. That's kind of for your role, right? And you just learned about something called anomaly detection, right? Which is if everything is like all the claims sizes that you are processing, and then someone else, one of the gurus or master gurus translated it for you. Hey, if all the claims that you're processing is $1,000 claims worth, and suddenly you see $100,000 claim, you need to start thinking it differently. That's an anomaly for you.
yes.
But my point is, it's obvious, but that is kind of anomaly detection is step one. You kind of form that connection during the learning process. And then you've just learned, by the way, hey, here's all these cool techniques about figuring out anomaly detection. And if you figure out anomaly detection, what else can you do with it? And then suddenly it's like, oh, I'm seeing all these claims which are there. Is there a project here? Is there a project where I should talk to my client and say, listen, you are treating, and this is a real life example, it's the same process we are using when it's $100,000 claim, and it's the same process we are using $100,000 claim. I bet while the effort of the process is the same, the impact and the value to you for $100,000 is actually completely different. That's a much higher risk and everything. Shouldn't you be thinking about kind of identifying upfront, putting a different kind of a skill set of person, getting deeper into it? The investigation is going to be a little bit different. Why should we think about that? You kind of propose a project like that because you just learned it, and then you propose it, and then you say, okay, can I actually predict much earlier? And this is what actually happened. Hey, when all the claims come in, can I just predict which claim is more likely to become a much more expensive claim and going to take a lot longer to handle? Because then I can prepare for it and I can manage in a separate way than the other claims. And suddenly it's like that becomes a project, and then you actually deliver the project. For clients, it's an amazing thing. It's a value they are getting which they didn't expect in terms of how you actually manage your operations and how you predict what is your high cost claims or a more complex claims going to be through a different process. And by the way, you are certainly applied a concept that you learned in the context of the work that you are doing, and it's a win-win. You learned it in a very deep way. You are more valuable as an employee. You are more marketable as an employee to the broader labor market, and your client has benefited.
Yeah, it's a win-win-win-win-win.
Yes, that's what it is.
You've deepened the consultative relationship. You've potentially generated more revenue for Genpact,
Exactly.
frankly, and the client is happier because they're getting way more value. So it's
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. That's just amazing. Really, really fascinating, and it really does show how sort of in the moment application of the learnings is definitely where that's where the rubber meets the road here when it comes to modern learning initiatives in business. Um, what is your vision for the Data Bridge program or the next program? Like, what is your vision? Kind of like using this as a launching point. Where do you want to go next?
So three things I think on the vision, and that has been a vision from the very beginning. We are kind of executing in phases,
Yeah.
right? Uh, so there's a big employee piece of it, which I think was kind of checkpoint one. The checkpoint two is, which is like the checkpoint two is, are our clients getting value out of it because of the program that we kind of launched, and whether we kind of get value or some value, or we get to keep some of the value that we are generating for our clients on that. So which is kind of value for clients, and that means value for us. You kind of referred to that. I think that so that's kind of that's where we are right now. And the third part of the leg is, do we actually change newer offering services? Actually, there is IP right now we are generating through all of this thing, right?
Mhm.
So does it change the newer set of the newer offerings altogether that we did not even think, or it was there, or it was buried under it? Are we able to create new services and products and offerings and IP and platforms around that? That's kind of where we are going to move towards next. And finally, at some point, can we take now this whole package that we have learned and help other enterprises take on this journey, go on this journey, right?
Okay.
Right
Yeah.
now we are doing it for ourselves, but we could potentially this itself is an offering. And there are some clients who are very interested in kind of getting some pieces of it, and that we have helped out. We have helped out some data literacy and data awareness programs in some of our clients too, based on our learnings. But this is not a kind of a skew for us today. But at some point, if it becomes more and more valuable, this could be a product and offering itself of how do you create data aware organizations.
Yeah, exactly. A turnkey product offering itself. And I'm also hearing, just it's a driver of surfacing up future value.
First value. That was not the intent. The fourth one was not the intent. Once we are sharing more with clients, and clients are like, hey, why don't you do it for us? That's kind of but the first three was definitely that kind of creating new value, new products and services. That was definitely a part of it.
Very, very strategic, very visionary, wonderful. And you know what? I'm just looking at the time, and but I wanted to just say that this is a great example also of um, not that you weren't a learning organization already, but there was definitely some latent demand for learning, and you provided sort of the supply to satisfy that
Yeah.
demand. Yeah.
And that, as I said, that was what was surprising for us as to kind of the take up. And I think I'm just convinced, because I mean, obviously, when new people come in and everything, we see that even the new cohorts take up the same rate. So there is just an inherent demand in the industry, I think, or a eagerness to kind of do that. And actually, the challenge what we figured out is everyone knows that they need to be a kind of data aware or get closer to this. The challenge is they don't know where to start. There's
Yeah.
so much information. There's a deluge and everything, and like this and that, and I think this process just makes it an easier and more structured approach to kind of go and do that.
Yeah, well, uh, can't wait for this podcast to be live because I think people will definitely reach out wanting to learn more. And Amresh, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. It's been really illuminating. This is really fascinating, exciting stuff.
No, thank you, Brent. I mean, I had a lot of fun kind of chatting about this, and hopefully some of these lessons other organizations kind of take and adopt, and always happy to share our learnings and our experiences that we have had. And there's a lot of roadblocks and scars that we also have, and I'm happy to always share that.
Well, absolutely. Nothing's perfect, but this is very inspiring. Thank you so much, Amresh.
Thank you.
Bye bye.